There he is. There he is, walking in the door. I knew it. I knew waited.
Where's, the elevator took us for a ride.
Oh,
What, diagonally?
Well, it just kind of went up and stopped somewhere. But
that's.
Seventh floor.
and then it came back down. And it opened up on the same floor. And
This is from the chief, and he paid for this on himself, so you know, no taxpayer funds were used. It's a Christmas card from chief.
gee, that's important.
Oh, it's a very nice card, I think. He probably says to the
All set?
rest of all the.
All set?
Roger.
All set? Is that, are we taping?
Yep.
We are taping. Okay, calling to order the Protection and Welfare Committee for Monday, November 28th, 2016, in City Hall Rooms 207. It is now 5 p.m. Let's do a roll call. See who's all here. Alder Dwarf.
Here.
Alder Zimmer.
Here.
Alder Galvin.
Yo,
Alder Scannell.
Here.
Here.
we don't know if he's here.
Yeah.
Here.
Okay, all are here, all are present. I'll take a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Motion made by Alder Dorf, seconded by Alder Galvin. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, the agenda has been approved. Take a motion to approve the minutes for October 24th, 2016.
Motion approved.
Motion to approve by Alder Galvin,
Second.
seconded by Alder Dorf. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And the minutes are approved. Notice of the change of agent for Quick Trip. Oh, wait, we got, special meeting minutes. Okay, minutes and minutes. We got a lot of minutes.
I think
Where's
that
the
might be a
time going?
typo, it looks like that's the same date.
No, November 14th.
Oh, mine has October 24th.
Oh.
Okay,
this
sorry.
one? Okay, yep. I'll take a motion to approve the minutes for the special meeting, November 14th, 2016.
Motion approved.
Motion by
Second.
Alder Galvin, seconded by Alder Dorf. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And the minutes for that meeting are approved. Thank you for catching that. Notice of change of agent for Quick Trip Inc. at 1871 Shawano Avenue. Staff.
No objection from the city attorney's office.
None from the police department.
Move to approve. Second.
Moved by Alder Zimmer to approve, second by Alder Galvin. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That motion carries. Okay, then, this is just a recommendation to the full council. Next Tuesday, 7 o'clock, they meet next door and they give the final say. So, shouldn't be any problem, but. Okay. Item 6, consideration with possible action on a review of Lisa Keith's operator license, which was approved at May 17th, 2016 City Council's meeting, but subject to review at 6 months. Staff?
We have no objections to the license continuing, there have been no violations.
No violations at all. No objection.
Motion to receive and place on file. Second.
Motion to receive and place on file by Alder Galvin, seconded by Alder Zimmer. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That motion carries. Number 7, consideration with possible action on an appeal by Matthew Zarnecki to the denial of his operator license application. Staff.
The city attorney's office has no objection to granting the appeal. I believe it was denied by the police department. Upon further review, he does have pending charges with the Brown County District Attorney's Office, but those have not been resolved yet. And even if they were frankly convicted of those, I don't believe they're substantially related enough to the activity that would be licensed. So that's the opinion of the city attorney's office.
And
I would agree.
So move to approve. Second.
motion to approve by Alder Zimmer, seconded by Alder Galvin. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay, that motion carries. Again, that'll be final say at the city council next Tuesday, 7 o'clock, room next door. So we're just a recommendation to them. Okay? Item number 8, consideration with possible action upon a request by Alder Moore to review the policy on liquor licenses, specifically focused on review, suspension, and revocation. Staff.
So I did speak with Alderman Moore last week regarding this request to try and get a feel a little bit more for what he was looking at. He indicated that it was primarily in response to some concerns that the process to revoke or suspend licenses took a while, and maybe wasn't the most efficient. However, we have to strictly conform with the rules set out in the state statutes for revocation and suspensions of liquor licenses. So there's really not much we can do to change our procedure. Again, not knowing exactly specifically what we're looking at. I think we have to, we do stick with the requirements of the state statutes to, review and revoke and suspend those licenses on a case-by-case basis. If there's any other concerns in the future, we can get those on the agenda as soon as they come. But, absent any specifics, I don't know what we can change in the procedure because it's outlined in the state statutes.
Move to receive, place on file.
Can I just ask a couple questions? So we can't be more restrictive than the state?
No.
Like in the past, we had a demerit point system, so we have to follow what the state lays out.
We do, and that's outlined in chapter 125, when we can suspend or revoke a license. Has to be certain violations that exist, and then, a complaint has to come forward from, a constituent, a department, the police department, something like that. So then once that comes forward, we actually still have to go through that quasi judicial hearing, get that put on the agenda, has to come before you guys and before the city council. So there's really not much we can change. Once those violations exist, we can bring forth a complaint, but we have to have that hearing. I know Alderman Moore suggested something about once somebody's convicted of a violation, can we suspend their violation? Or there's license right away until that judicial hearing exists, and I said, no, we have to wait until, they're given a chance to present their case, and then you guys can make the ultimate decision. But, so we can't do anything like that. We still have to have that hearing where they can present their case and we present ours and things like that.
So we haven't done one of these yet, since April, right?
No,
Since I've been on, I
No.
don't recall any of these, so.
no.
Nope.
I've done one since I've been on the committee.
So
many
so
years.
if there's a violation by a bar, and they violate whatever, A, and the state says that that could be cause for a quasi judicial hearing. But if a citizen or the PD, nobody brings it forward, then it just goes by the wayside.
Typically, if the police department isn't going to raise it, then they're just have a violation on their record. It counts towards them in the future if they were to get more, but they don't. I don't believe the police department automatically recommends a revocation or a suspension.
Even if they have a conviction for a violation of A.
I don't think we would, because we initially would write the citation. I don't think there's too much follow-up after the court hearings and everything else.
So would there be a
Signs.
process that we could put in place so that if someone's charged with one of those violations that qualifies for a review, that upon completion, the department's notified or whatever, whomever notified, or even the law department, I suppose, could file a complaint?
Correct.
So could we put something in place so that because my frustration has always been in the past, we always have the best intentions to hold the bar owners responsible, but the processes we've had in place don't work for whatever reason, or things fall by the wayside, and then before you know, you have a problem in place, that is just a drain on resources.
Sure. Yeah, I think we can look at having, once those violations are convicted of a certain violation, we could, bring it up to you guys or have somebody, if the police department determines that they want to file a complaint, they can do that.
It would be as simple as you guys sending an email to the district captain that's assigned to that area where the bar is, geographically. It could be that simple.
Well, I can tell you what historically has occurred. I probably was on the committee for probably the better part of 20 years, but usually at renewal time, at least historically when I was on, was that the police department would bring forward problem properties, some more problematic than others. And we used to bring them front and forward and have kind of a come to Jesus talk with them a little bit, and most of them, we just put them on notice that, any more of this kind of stuff, and you're probably be looking at a quasi-judicial hearing. But it is usually initiated by the police department, although I think there's been an alderman in the past that's asked to review a particular establishment in his district. And I think we even had once a citizen complaint that we reviewed, but that was normally, we'd look at them. Now, if the police department was, if there's somebody that had a lot of violations and there were a lot of police calls to come to it, then the committee would make a decision whether they wanted to, they thought there was enough there to actually have a quasi-judicial, so we aren't spinning our wheels. And then it comes down to making a decision. Of course, they have a chance to present their case, and sometimes, you know, there are two sides to things, although we rely heavily on the police department, and that's how they come to be. Now, I don't want to be guessing, but I think there's only been probably 10 or 15 of them in the last 40 years. And sometimes they're resolved through stipulations. We have a quasi-judicial hearing, and sometimes they refer it to the staff, and they work out an agreement with them. Sometimes they surrender their license, sometimes, you know, there's heavy restrictions put on the license in order to keep the license. There's, you know, a whole plethora of possibilities, but that's how it's been done in the past, so I think, I don't know if it's been the practice as much in recent years, but the police used to bring problem properties, even ones that maybe aren't quite ready for revocation, but we want to put people on notice. We want to let them know that we're watching, that this is a privilege and to have a license, and that, you know, if they want to keep their license, they got to straighten up the act. And that usually helped quite a bit, and sometimes it didn't, and we ended up taking the license.
Yes.
So what are some specific offenses that could result in revocation?
So a disorderly house is one, serving to habitual drunkards, violating some certain drug crimes, serving underage kids, and I can provide you guys with
I was just curious, you know, a few of those.
Mhm.
So some of these things happen probably from time to time.
Okay, go.
Okay, some of these things happen from time to time. So in what Alder Moore had said was review, suspension, and revocation. So there's a like, you can start with review and then maybe they might get suspended for a little while, or does it usually just go to revocation?
We just asked them
Yes.
to review the policy. They didn't ask us to review all of them. They wanted to know what the policy was, I think. Isn't that what you said earlier? or-
Yeah,
Yeah.
and in his concerns, I think, were that, maybe he wasn't aware of the specifics, or that it was taking too long, or I think he had heard that there were problems and difficulties in suspending or revoking a license, and just wanted to see if there was a way we could kind of speed that up, I guess.
There's a lot of checks and balances now at the police department where we don't see a lot of properties get to that point because we
Okay.
have community police officers assigned. They do bar plans with these taverns.
Oh, okay.
If there's a lot of calls to a particular address, we're already trying to address it by meeting with the owners and the managers. We're trying to not get to the point where,
I see. So things are happening. They may
Things
not
are
be coming
happening.
here, but there's this other
before they would
steps.
come here, there's all kinds of steps that would have
Okay.
occurred beforehand.
Thank you.
Alder Moore, we're on your item.
Already?
Yes, yeah. We know, my committee, man, we're like clockwork.
Apparently not.
Yeah. So if you,
Yeah, so the whole point of bringing this forward was, it looks like we're going to review this policy. And in my experience, and specifically with the former Beach Road Liquor, it was quite a process to get the license pulled over there. And that had a really long and strong history of problems, especially with the police department. Captain Galvin can definitely attest to that. So I think that we need to, within whatever the state allows us to do, we need to make sure that we expedite judiciary hearings and get them before the committee, so, you know, those licenses can get yanked in a real timely fashion if that's the, you know, course that we need to take.
And I would agree, the Vincente's Bar was the epitome of
Right.
the system not working properly. And there's been several other properties, you know, when you, just based on what you've listed, you know, underage drinking, disorderly house. I mean, we've had taverns I know in the past that have had those times many, and nothing seems to happen. Or the process took so long just to get to the quasi-judicial hearing that they were operating for 6 months with more violations occurring. And I just think we needed to, I agree with Joe, I think we need to have a better or a speedier process that gets the city endgame a lot sooner.
Well, I think that if, you know, problems are brought to light and that process starts to take place, if you give another 3 months, then they can come and they can say, hey, look, we have 3 clean months, you know, and they can make that case. And I think that the problem needs to be nipped before it becomes a problem.
Right.
And with business owners knowing that there's a expedient way of having that license suspended, probated, pulled, whatever it might be, you know, you might see a lot more compliance in it. So I just think that if, you know, I know with your communication, if it goes to where we're going to review this policy and we're gonna take a longer look at it, that we need to strengthen that part of it. So, and that's the whole reason for bringing it forward. So,
Okay.
thanks.
Well, what you missed was, oh, go
Yes.
ahead.
Well, I was just reviewing what historically occurred, that especially at licensing time, the police department used to bring problem properties forward. Now, they didn't always have to wait for licensing time, but that was a typical time where they reviewed all the license, and they brought up the problem properties, and sometimes we brought them before us to have a, front, face-to-face discussion with them, and, put them on notice that things didn't improve. They might end up with a quasi-judicial hearing. But an alderman can bring up a particularly problem property that might be somehow not getting forward. If you're concerned about something, we look them over. We'll bring them before us, and we'll put a hearing on it, put people on notice. But, we do have due process laws too, and we're not operating in a star chamber here where we just beat them in and out. We're the deciding factor, but you have to follow some process. But,
Right.
if the police department says it's been less problematic because of the fact that they go through a bar plan before they get their license, and they have a little more knowledge of what's expected of them. And in the past, the ones that had the problems were usually the newer ones that are not as familiar, and I think they've taken some proactive steps to make owners know what their real responsibilities are, and so that there's no doubt in their minds what's expected of them. So, but if you have a problem one, you just bring it forward, and we'll bring you just put it on an agenda, and we'll bring the owner forward, and we'll have a discussion here, and we'll.
The problem was that it went through inspections and nuisance abatements, and then the police department was part of the NAT team, and it was just quite a process. I think the Senzies was the same thing. It was quite a process to actually get that license pulled. So whatever is within our rights to do, I think we need to make sure that we're proactive in doing that.
I think a message needs to be sent. I was recently in Minnesota, and we stopped at a place to get a bite to eat, and they couldn't serve alcohol. They had 2 underage serving violations. That was it. Their license was automatically pulled by the municipality.
But that state law must have allowed them.
Well, and we could here also. We could do it for 1 violation. You see, and this is the thing that has always concerned me in the past, is that we'll have establishments, and this has been in the past, I'm not aware of anything in the recent past, where they'd have 10, 15, 20 violations, and they would somehow limp along maintaining that license. And you look at the total calls for service and everything else at these establishments, and it was a drain, just a complete drain on our community. You could have a place down the block with very few calls for service, no violations, and, you look at why can one operate properly and one can't. And so I agree with Joe. I think we need to have a process that is much quicker and sends a message to operators that, this is a privilege for the city to grant you this license, and you're here to benefit our community and not to detract from it.
We did discuss how, from staff, that we are fairly restrained by state statute. So that,
Yeah, I had a conversation myself there, so
okay.
yeah, they had legally reached out to me, so.
Yeah. But as we look at both these going forward, maybe we can,
Right.
we'll see what happens.
Really, a suggestion is a review of the policy.
Yep.
If you're gonna take any action, I just think it needs to be reviewed and make sure
Yep.
that we're using every resource we've got.
Yep. Thank you.
All right, thanks.
Anything else? I think I'd just like to add that a few years back, we were having some issues, and staff did provide us with a spreadsheet of bars and citations, and that's sort of been discontinued because things, I think, have quieted down quite a bit. That's something we could always ask the staff if we're interested in that. I think we need to get it once a month or once every other month or something like that. If we feel the need to keep a pulse on this. Otherwise, I think we can rely on staff to come forward when something serious comes forward or when there's a number of violations. And then just a comment on, I don't think it's a privilege that we allow a liquor license. I think it's a responsibility. That's the way I'm going to look at it, and I'm going to put forth that proposition. I think it's a responsibility for someone to have a liquor license. I don't think it's a privilege. I don't think doing them a privilege just doesn't sound right to me, but.
Well, it's not an automatic grant.
It's not an automatic- it's not an automatic grant.
It's a privilege granted by our committee and the council. It is a privilege, and of course, with that privilege comes the responsibility of running an orderly house, as our staff has told us.
Yeah. Well,
And if you want to have the police department bring forward anytime there's more than 2 violations in a year or something, you can ask them whatever you want. I mean, you can set whatever parameters you want, but generally speaking, I think if we just ask them to bring any problem properties to our attention earlier rather than later, and, hope we can do some intervention to solve the problem. If not, when it comes for renewal of license, we can look at it more carefully.
yes. And I don't want to make a big issue out of this. I'm just putting forth my 2 cents of how I see it, and I see it more of a responsibility both on them and us. So just whatever. It's not worth any discussion, just tossing that out. So, any motion on this?
Receive and place in file.
Second.
Motion to receive and place on file by Alder Zimmett, seconded by Alder Dorf. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That motion carries. Item number 9, last but not least. Consideration with possible action, a request by Alder Scannell to consider imposing a liquor moratorium on all convenience stores, as well as phasing out current licenses. Staff, do you have a little bit of background on that for us? And
So a little bit. I did reach out to the League of Wisconsin Municipalities, primarily related to the phasing out the current licenses, which is something that, again, we have to have a reason to either revoke or suspend or not renew that license. Those are laid out very strictly in the statute, so the current licenses that are out there, unless they do have the violations that we were kind of alluding to, there's really not a way for us just to blanket take those away. So if you guys want to, place a moratorium on other new licenses, you're certainly free to do that or deny them as they come. But primarily phasing them out is going to be difficult.
So, without a violation, we can't enact an ordinance that says we don't want any convenience stores to be selling liquor. And that wouldn't cut it.
Correct.
No, that's not quite what you said. You said we couldn't, anyone that had them, it's a difficult process to remove it, if I understood
Right,
correctly.
the ones that are
But that
there.
we could impose it on any new ones if we wanted to.
Yes,
We don't
new
have to
ones.
grant anyone we don't want to.
Correct, that's correct. I'm sorry if that wasn't clear.
No,
No,
but
he was-
if they currently have a license to sell beer, wine, or liquor,
Mhm.
there's no way we could deny renewing that.
Unless they have one of the listed
Unless
violations.
they've got a violation.
At that point, they have a property right.
So we've opened up the barn door and there's no way to get the horse back in it.
No,
That was a
you don't
count.
have to grant new ones. And weed them out as they have violations in the future.
What about if they close, or what if they sell?
Then they also have to be transferred, so they would have to come back in front of you guys as well. They have to meet certain qualifications, then you could treat it as, a new violation. You don't want it to be there because there's too many in the area or whatever you have.
So like if someone sold their business, we don't have to grant.
Correct,
So a transfer is like a new one.
correct.
So you can slowly get rid of them that way if you want to.
But to be fair, we would actually have to set up something.
Fair is a subjective term.
What
Well,
what I'm trying to
Well,
say
be
is,
fair, he's like,
but
there is some that's
he has the floor now,
automatically fair.
please. Alder Zimmett, he has the floor now, wait.
just give me a second, and then you can cut me down after I'm done
Well, I'm
talking.
not trying to cut you down, it's just that you're kind of.
But, well, let him finish.
If we want to be fair, we should establish then a citywide moratorium that lays that out. That we're not granting any new liquor license or beer or wine to convenience stores. And that if a establishment was to have a violation, they could expect to have their license pulled. Or if an establishment was to be sold, they could expect not to have that renewed. I mean, just to be fair to everybody on the playing field, so if a guy's buying an establishment, he knows he's probably not gonna get a liquor license with it or a beer or wine license.
And I did bring some examples of the old moratoriums that you guys have put in place on Broadway and Main Street and things like that. And those do, talk about the high concentration of licensed establishments, the council's desire to, improve the public peace, safety, and welfare and things like that. So if you had some sort of, reasons for those things, that would be helpful.
That's it?
I'll wait.
Yes?
So, what is the definition of a convenience store?
I don't know if that's defined in the statutes. I mean, I don't know if that's something that you guys would want to, you know, put restrictions on. And obviously, all the moratoriums that we have in place exempt restaurants. You know, it's, again, that's more of a policy consideration as to what you would want to place, you know, what terminology you want to place in a moratorium.
I've owned them for 18 years. and I
Oh,
can
please,
tell you
please,
that-
please, we need to open up before you can. Well,
Okay, and then my second question would be, based on what are we even considering doing this? What are all of the things that, where's the data that show us that if a convenience store has a liquor license, there's a problem? It's kind of a hypothetical question, I guess. I'm not expecting you to have an answer right now, but I really would not want to make any decision without some data showing me there's a reason to make a change. I'm not convinced I've seen that yet. Others of you may be convinced you've seen it. I'm not convinced I've seen that. That's all I have to say right now.
And I guess I would add on to that, if we're looking at a moratorium or removing these licenses because we believe that liquor is causing problems in our neighborhood, then I think we need to look at wine and beer also. I mean, people that are habitual drunkards or alcoholics, it's not just hard liquor that causes these problems, it's beer, it's wine, it's anything with alcohol in it, basically, that they can consume, and creates the behavior that we have, the community has to deal with. So I think if we're gonna go forward with this, we need to, like Barb said, we need to get some data to show that this really is an issue. If it's coming out of the convenience stores, what if it's coming out of the taverns? Or the liquor stores, or the grocery stores? I think we need to look at all of that, and get whatever data we can together to see, is that really where the problem is? I mean, it feels good to say we're not gonna allow any more liquor at convenience stores, but if they're selling wine and beer and people are still getting intoxicated and causing problems in our community, it may feel good to do that, but it hasn't solved any problems. Or if more of the problems are coming from people that are drinking in their homes or in taverns or restaurants, again, if we restrict the convenience stores, it feels good like we're solving a problem, but in fact, we may not be solving any problems at all. So I think before we could be able to go forward, again, to be fair to everybody, I think we need to have some data or some kind of a study, if it's possible, to make sure we're making the right decisions as it's going to be affecting these businesses in our community.
Well, Mr. Scanlon, you brought this forward. What is it that you had in mind?
well, in speaking with you, I think the intent is to, that there's a concern that we're flooding our neighborhoods with alcohol, that if there's a way we can turn off that tap, we should look into doing that. There have been some problems brought forward. The problems mainly so far have been litter, loitering, and, listen, one.
Disorderly.
Disorderly public intoxication.
Police calls.
Yeah. Police calls. I would like to add, as far as collecting data as much as we can, if we could plot out, for me, the issue for alcohol abuse, alcohol problems is more related to violence, verbal and physical abuse, fights, domestic violence, sexual assaults, and I'm wondering if the police could compile a longitudinal study over a few years of mapping out where we've had these problems, and if it's noted or can be discerned in any way that alcohol was a factor. And then I wanted to know just what kind of legal ramifications, what kind of legal possibilities we had as far as leveling the playing field and removing alcohol from stores that already sell it, even though there may not be a problem with these stores selling alcohol. It seems to me, if we're going to go to a moratorium and not a case-by-case, then the playing field needs to be leveled. I don't think one person should be able to do it and another not, and we're just doing it not because we don't know if there's a problem or not, but just because we feel that we've got too much alcohol flowing around in our city, and that's a problem. So it was, that's what I wanted. I wanted us to have a consistent policy, is what my main aim for bringing this forward was. The policy in the past was individually, case by case, and if there was a problem, we turned off the tap. But if there wasn't, then there was no need to. But going forward now, I think it's your intention that we have a moratorium. Doesn't matter if there's a problem or not. Just that the fact that we're selling so much alcohol is a problem, and can lead to problems. So I want a consistent policy, and I also would like more data before coming up with such a policy. And that was my intention. Is there any concerns anyone else has concerning this?
Well, I think we all know that alcoholism is a serious problem all over the place. And it's just my general feeling, I'm just speaking generally, of course, is that the more access to alcohol, the more advertising that access provides to an area, the more it's generally promoted. Now, we know the alcoholic seems to be able to find his alcohol no matter what. And I also spoke to you in the past that historically, alcohol sales were very strictly controlled either through a liquor store or taverns who had licenses in place, and that was their main livelihood, so they were very conscientious about the distribution of the alcohol. And you know, the pendulum has swung the other way in the last 25 years, where it has become more and more accessible in all areas, and actually, you know, it's made it easier for people to violate the law because there's so many more people dealing with it. And sometimes younger people, people that don't have a stake in the business that they're working for, people that don't earn high wages, you know, in the convenience store and all that sort of thing. It's, you know, it's just people earning low wages don't have the same protective qualities for their businesses as people that earn their whole living at it. So I think historically it's shown that the looser the gauge of who can sell it, the more violations you're potentially going to have. And, you know, maybe it's time for us to at least do some stings to find out, has it self-controlled itself? Or is it still really easy to buy through just a grocery store or a convenience store or a grocery store? I mean, I just, you know, consistency, you know, as it's been said, has been the hobgoblin of small minds. But it's still at the same time, in other words, is there something that fits all? My general feeling, and that I'm getting feedback from, you know, my neighborhood associations, and from the fact that, you know, our drug task force, our alcohol drug task force, is that, you know, we aren't doing very much to turn the spigot off. So I, in response to people in the neighborhoods, I've asked that at least a month or two ago that they not be granted in 3 of the neighborhoods that are either in my neighborhood or border it. And the council did see fit to pass it, but then, you know, just a couple weeks ago, 2 more were approved within a couple blocks of each other, you know, on a commercial street, but very close to neighborhoods, etc. And so I understand you want to bring forward, should we have a policy or shouldn't we have? I generally feel that we should try to keep them away from neighborhoods as much as possible. I think one of the big gathering pieces of information that we should gather is let's have a sting operation again and find out what the violations are. I just think in terms of neighborhood development. Easy access to alcohol in the neighborhood is not something that is going to be a builder of positive things in your neighborhood. Not that maybe people who are imbibing it couldn't have somebody go in a car and go somewhere else and get it. If they really want it, I guess they can figure out how to do it. But the easier it is, the more likely you're going to have a problem, I think. Well, that's just my opinion. So, if you want to gather some information, let's authorize some sting operations and find out just how culpable people are out there. Because it was really stunning the time they did it. I really, like Mr. Galvin, I can't remember exactly when that was. If it was 5 years ago, 4 years ago, 3 years ago, or
Back when I was,
longer.
I think the last time we did compliance checks was back when I was in the CPs, so it's been about 5 or 6 years,
5 or 6 years ago.
7 or 8 years ago.
But you remember that it was like 75% failed. I mean, it was like astounding. It knocked my eyeball. I would, if I would have guessed, I would say, maybe 10% or something. But it was an enormous number. And then it was repeated a month or two later, and it was 50%. It still was bad even after people had been nabbed. And of course, part of the problem, and I've alluded to it before, is that the owners of these operations oftentimes have rather low-paid help, and there's a high turnover of help, and, so you're asking for trouble. But again, when your business isn't the distribution of alcohol, that is a very serious license that you depend on your livelihood for. If that's not the case, there isn't the desire to be real strict about what you're doing. And a lot of times what would happen is, people have a violation, well, they fire the employee, which I think is the right thing to do because the employee didn't follow the rules. I didn't think the owners were promoting the idea of selling to underage people and that sort of thing. I certainly wouldn't accuse them of that, but the very nature of the beast, and I'm being kind of repetitive, but when people, their livelihood really depended on it, they were very strict about it and they paid attention to it because they earned a full livelihood out of it. The people selling now are not people who are depending on it for their livelihood. And of course, it falls on the owners, but the owners can't be there every minute. And that's the nature of the beast. So I say, why are we promoting the sale of alcohol in convenience stores? Sure, it's money makers for them. But they didn't have it before. I know times change. But especially, I think if we want to make some policy, anything close to schools, anything close to parks, anything close to dense neighborhoods. But I don't think it would even be such a crazy idea to go back to having liquor stores if that was their main business and, only give licenses to people who, that's their livelihood, and they're not hiring $10 an hour help. They're watching their store and they're paying their help appropriately, so people have a vested interest in not, and don't have just a casual approach to the law. So that's all I gotta say.
Let me ask, Officer, excuse me. How do we, other than sting operations, like when we do cite someone for serving a minor, how does that come about? Is there a complaint made, or how?
We could definitely do sting operations if that's what you want the police department to do. Typically, the sting operations would revolve around us sending an underage person in to buy alcohol, if that's the problem. I haven't heard that is the problem. I heard that the problem was intoxicated people buying alcohol. Well, we're not going to send somebody in that's too intoxicated and attempt to buy alcohol and then cite the person that sells them because they're too intoxicated. We don't operate that way. Commissioner Galvin said that we haven't done it for 6 years. I was on nights up until July, but I think we've done sting operations, and we will have that information for you the next meeting, but I think we've done it in the last 2 years. We've done it with cigarettes for sales with underage, and I'm almost sure we've done it with taverns. I can't cite for you the percentage of people that failed right now, but I can sure have that information for you. From
that's
25
just
years
one
of
portion.
experience, from 25 years of experience, I can tell you that alcohol is a problem in a lot of cases where people are arrested. I don't know how you're going to ascertain whether they bought it at a convenience store or at a liquor store or what, but alcohol is legal, and I think the police department's stance is this: we're for responsible ownership of these stores and responsible liquor sales. That's where we stand.
And it stings in the past were mostly full-size bars? They were all over?
They were all over, and like I said, I can get you those numbers for the next meeting. I can have them in 2 weeks, so I can email them out. I can have that.
When we did it, it used to be, well, at least when I was running the community police, it was restaurants, convenience stores, and liquor stores and taverns. I think maybe what you're talking about, Todd, is you guys would go out on the night shift and just do the taverns, weren't you?
No.
Where you'd walk in
No,
and
it was
start
also,
checking
it was
IDs.
also liquor sales at taverns and convenience stores.
And you want to include grocery stores now as well, correct?
Yeah, you would have
Right.
to, just to be fair,
Well,
yes.
when they did that, the last thing that I was talking about, they went into grocery stores.
Okay, so we,
And I know that's
And they
happening.
almost all failed. They were like 100%, so
You can pull up the data.
big joke.
We could pull that up, I could have that for you tomorrow.
okay, so
Don't have it
let's,
now.
let's be clear on what we want from staff. I'm sorry, go
I
ahead.
guess I
Go
would
ahead.
have to say, let's define the problem. What is the problem? Is the problem alcoholics? The alcoholic can find alcohol no matter what. I agree with that, Alder Zima. They can find alcohol no matter what. So does it really do any good to say convenience stores can't have it because the alcoholic is going to find alcohol no matter what? I agree with you, alcoholism is a serious problem. But what is the problem that we are trying to address by making a change in practice or policy? And is it underage? That just came out right now. What are stings going to show us? I guess I'm not clear. We don't want alcohol in neighborhoods. Is litter the problem? Disorderly police calls the problem? I have to know what are we looking for? And I think it's only fair to staff to. It's kind of like a scattershot approach here right now. Let's narrow down what we're trying to.
Well, it's all of the above.
So we're trying to get
Everything
rid
you
of
said.
anything that's alcohol related?
Well, when I first spoke, I said, you know, the more access, the more advertising or promotion you have of alcohol, the more it's in the public eye. We know what happened with smoking when they stopped smoke advertising, cigarette and tobacco advertising. Well, you know, when I grew up, at least 50% of the people smoked. Now it's down to what, 15, 20%, something like that. So I don't know, the more it's in front of you, the more it's glorified, so to speak, the more it's considered cool or whatever. And especially in the older neighborhoods, and in neighborhoods in general, but especially the older neighborhoods, where you have a congregation of, you know, sometimes less fortunate people, that that's where you get your police calls and all that connected with alcohol. And you know, our chief came in and he acknowledged that, and he said, well, rather than do something drastic, that he would put more patrol on it. And we haven't had that report back yet from the chief. Said he wanted 6 months to see if more patrol, because really it's in these inner city neighborhoods that where, you know, people without cars, all that sort of thing. The easier they have access, the more they're going to drink. That's my feeling. If it wasn't available there at all, it would be, they'd still get drunk, but maybe not as often. There'd be less problems in general, and it's generally acknowledged that there are less police calls, especially in larger cities where there is less distribution.
I think that was the single serve report that you're looking for, the single
That was
It was-
Single sales?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep, that can be ready the next meeting also.
Okay.
The chief mentioned it today in the staff meeting that he wants that ready for the next meeting. I don't think the 6 months is up yet. That's right.
No,
Yeah,
not
we're
quite
getting
close. Yep.
And I guess I would agree with Barb. I'm not sure, you know, if we're trying to stop crimes related or even minor violations related to alcohol, I think getting the data on where those people are getting their alcohol from is gonna be difficult. I know at the Packer games, whenever we make an arrest, we try and get a breath test on them to see what their alcohol level is, and, you can see a direct correlation there, but I don't know, and Todd, I think you'd agree with me, how easy is that gonna be when you're arresting someone on a domestic violence, as part of your question is,
Where did you buy?
where did you get the alcohol you consumed tonight? Or any of the other crimes that we arrest people for. I know that compliance checks are only going to check to see if they're checking for proper ID when people are buying. Enforcing the over-serving law in taverns, as we found out in the past, is extremely difficult in this state. The law is not very well written. And so, yeah, I guess I would, before, we're asking for a lot of data here, it sounds like, but what are we trying to determine?
I mean, do you agree that alcohol is a bigger problem with younger people?
No, I think alcohol is a problem with anybody. It
Well,
cuts
you know,
across
There's
all.
alcoholism at all ages, but
Right. No, I don't s-
alcohol consumption at a younger age usually ends up with bigger problems.
No, I noticed there was when we went from 18 to 21, there was a definite drop in calls for service to taverns. But we're looking at instituting a higher drinking age. I don't think we're going to be around in this world anymore by the time they ever change something like that, especially in this state, with its alcohol culture. But yeah, alcohol is a problem. I saw it for 36 years. I saw it in my family. I mean, it's an issue. But I think, like Barb said, you can get that alcohol anywhere. Is it a start maybe to not have it in the convenience stores? It might be, but I'd like to see some data. And I know there's organizations out there that have studied this problem. And maybe that's who we should be looking for to see what they have. There's several groups within Wisconsin. I know that Bill Bongo, when he was on the department, was involved with them. I could probably reach out to him and get some names of some organizations and see what they have to put forward for us to take a look at and consider as we make this decision going forward.
Well, I know that the single serve issue which we were looking at, there was a lot of data about it. And again, I mean, you have to sometimes use common sense and common logic that, hey, the more you promote it, the more you're gonna have it. So I'm just saying, let's promote it less in neighborhoods. That doesn't mean that somebody in a neighborhood can't go somewhere and get 2 cases of beer and 10 bottles of whiskey and cause a hell of a lot of problems. But at least it's not.
Hey, Dad,
Son.
you're best friends with this guy here.
Yeah, okay, yeah, we're best friends, son. Just, we'll be done in a little bit, son.
Okay.
I'll have to apologize.
That's all right.
I brought him along today, but
That's okay, no problem.
he's getting better, so.
Good.
Good.
But he doesn't always do
That's all right.
appropriate things.
Not a big deal.
But, so anyway, I think the stings are important
Oh, absolutely.
and that we should be doing them on a fairly regular basis, at least once a year or twice a year. Because, the younger you get them started with alcohol, the easier it is for them to get alcohol, the more likely they're going to become alcoholics. So I think that's an important aspect of our study here.
I think I've kind of, like, if we deny licenses to convenience stores, the if-then statement would be, then what problem will we have solved? What difference will we have seen? And I can't come up with an answer to that, but that kind of cause and effect is the cause liquor stores having, or convenience stores having alcohol causes this, and them not having alcohol is then going to have this effect. I'm not sure what that's going to be. And I'm not sure we've defined it. I don't think it's going to eliminate alcoholism in our community.
What, do you think just letting it flow as much
I
as
think-
possible is going to help?
If I were
Gotta finish.
addressing alcoholism, I'd want to look at it through a program like Libertas or some treatment programs. I mean, if alcoholism in the community, is that what we're focused on? And therefore, if that is what we're concerned about, what are the real answers? There are studies out there about what communities can do to help people that have alcoholism. And whether you accept that it's a disease or a choice, it's still a problem. So if alcoholism is what we're looking at, then I'd like to approach that in a different way on the Protection Welfare Committee.
Well, I can kind of understand and see what Alderman Zimmer is saying. If you want to use cigarettes as an example, the way they addressed it was not just to make it harder to get cigarettes. They did educational programs, they did public service announcements, they started raising the tax on cigarettes, making them more and more expensive to purchase. They start restricting where you could use the cigarettes. There was
Stop
the
promoting
huge,
it on television.
there was a huge lawsuit where the cigarette companies had to pay out. So I mean, there was a process, and you can see it's taken several generations for it to get to the point where we're at now, but it has had a positive effect on our society. And so I agree with Barb though, too. I think just restricting it, blam, and being done with it isn't gonna have what we really wanna have, which is people abusing alcohol, whether they're alcoholics or a one-time abuser. Who have a bad experience and then learn from that and don't do it anymore. So I think it needs to be a many-pronged approach, of which maybe restricting access might be part of the solution, but not the whole solution. Where it might be more involved with, you've got the DARE program, but that's only taught, I think, in what, 5th grade, Todd?
5th grade.
5th grade. If you teach someone math in 5th grade and don't teach them any more math, how proficient are they going to be at it by the time they
The school
graduate?
counselor do teach alcohol
Well,
prevention.
And the funds are being cut back.
right. So I mean, but this is something I don't think that this committee can solve for our
We aren't
society.
going to solve the whole problem. I mean, that's ridiculous to even put that on us, but we're one piece of it. And I think access and by younger people and by people in general in neighborhoods, I think is at least a positive step.
Well, one component of this is certainly how this affects the public, and I thought I would save opening the floor until next time when we had more data and we could get more input, but since people have shown up, I think it would be appropriate to allow them to speak if they want to.
Could I bring in one more thing?
Certainly.
It's on this general topic, but something that when I sat on the committees before that I felt sensitive to was that people using fake IDs to get access to alcohol. And, in taverns, liquor stores, wherever. And I always felt that a way to help eliminate it is I thought, well, the guy who's a victim of the fake ID, maybe didn't look at it close enough or didn't have the verification properly or whatever, the person who committed the crime was actually getting by. More often than not, they weren't cited, it was the establishment. And I always thought that we should put more responsibility and maybe encourage our departments to give tickets to the perpetrators. And maybe they are, I don't know, but at least at that time, oftentimes that wasn't the case. And I can remember, what's that builder's name, went bankrupt, Juza. He owned an establishment, he really ran it like a tight ship. And he came and threw down 100 fake IDs that he was paying his bouncers $5 every time they'd catch one. And, are we doing anything to prosecute people who are trying to break the law, especially the younger people that are trying to break the law?
Well, I don't want to speak for the prosecutor's office, but the city attorney probably wouldn't convict a tavern owner for serving somebody underage when they had a fake ID without doing something to the person that actually had the fake ID. I can't see that happening. If you have an instance or whatever, we can look at it, maybe there was a circumstance, but if I was a prosecutor, it wouldn't make much sense to me to just write the one ticket.
Well, I'm curious if you could get that statistics of how many of those tickets have been given in the last 5
Are you
years.
asking for how many the police department has issued?
Well, issued or you can give us the convictions too, but I assume that there's usually, a forfeiture,
Mhm.
$100 or $200, whatever it is. But how many have we actually given?
I
Is
can
that
tell you-
something we concentrate on anymore?
I can tell you that, just like in the Juza instance that you referenced, I don't think an establishment calls the police every time that they confiscate a fake ID. And I don't know if we could handle all that to 8 areas. I know that with the new driver's licenses and everything else, checks and balances, it's a little bit harder to present a fake ID and get in. They also have scanners now in most taverns.
That never occurred.
Hey, just be quiet.
So, I can look at how many underage or possession of fake ID tickets we have, or,
Well, I'm not here to point a finger at anybody or anything. I'm just curious if we are doing that or not. Because it was, I felt problematic at the time, this was some years ago, that, they really weren't rounding up everybody that had a fake ID. They'd go in and close the doors of a place and check the IDs of everybody in the place.
I guess my question would be, how would the police know about it unless we were called by the establishment that was presented as fake ID?
But are they all given a ticket then?
I can't say yes or no to that, but
Well, I'm just saying, is that something we can, positively we can do to try to cut down young people
Sure.
trying to even get the alcohol?
sure.
I had my first beer at 17. But I got it through a friend, so,
Well, I think the statute of limitations passed, so you're okay.
yeah.
You're good.
Luckily, it didn't agree with me, but, my biological father died of alcoholism, and I'm just glad that I get sick from it. But I don't have a tolerance for it, so.
Move to open the floor.
So, motion to open the floor by Alder Dorr, second by Alder Galvin, all in favor?
Aye.
If there's anybody here who would like to come forward and speak on this issue, we will be doing this again, and we're not gonna be wrapping it up tonight, but if you'd like to come forward now, certainly, state your name and address, and then just address the chair.
I'm Joe Lambert. I live in Denmark, actually. I don't live in Green Bay. I sold my convenience stores in central Wisconsin because I've always lived in Brown County. And my idea was maybe to someday build one here. I sold all of mine out there so I can finally come back home. But how would I go about wondering if I'm going to get treated fair? If I want to build one here, I want to be able to do what Quick Trip's doing and Chris Doyle is doing and whoever else is coming into town to get a license. I agree, either take it away from everybody or give everybody the same opportunity to make money. A convenience store is being convenient to all of my customers. So I would put in car washes, I'd sell vegetables, I'd sell whatever I could to get people to come in, give them another reason to come. So if I am going to put one in Green Bay, I would really like to know ahead of time whether I'm going to be able to get a liquor license and a beer license if that's going to go that far. Thank you.
Just any questions? No? Thank you. Yeah.
Thanks.
Well, hopefully we'll get that figured out for you. Staff then, pretty clear idea of what we're looking for as far as information for next time? We need to go over,
It doesn't have to be all at once either.
no, but,
Is it primarily from the police department that you want these statistics? I mean, is there anything that my office, we can look up the prosecution records and things like that, but,
and what other cities?
sure.
And if you're aware, if you can find out about his other studies, I mean, Albert Galvin seems to have the lead on that, too. but you
I'll
could
reach out
also-
to Bill Long, and see if he knows of anybody we could reach out to.
For
Send
other
it wrong.
cities, do not, can we define other cities, other cities similar size in the state of
Doesn't matter.
Wisconsin?
Doesn't matter,
Doesn't it matter?
no.
Okay.
Well, alcohol, doesn't matter if it's a big city, small city, medium city, if there's an alcohol issue, how they're handling it could be,
Oh, I didn't know that, I thought you were talking about if they allow convenience stores to sell alcohol.
well, that as well.
I'm
but-
not sure what, okay, can you define the question?
Well, just whatever studies we can find related to this issue, including if there's cities that, and that's my understanding that there, other cities have either gone dry or wet. There hasn't been a middle ground, is my understanding. And other studies on what other cities might have done
Well,
for.
research what restrictions cities have
Put
put
on.
on the sale of,
Sale.
on the retail sales of liquor, not.
And issuing of licenses.
I mean, you can Google this stuff. I invite you to all do that. But I don't think we should just throw up our hands and say, well, there's nothing we can do, and et cetera. I mean, I think there are things you can try to do to set an example.
Absolutely. I guess I would ask the police department if you could pull some data, Todd. You know, there's a difference between compliance checks and complaints of violations. But if you could pull some data maybe over the last, I don't know, 4 or 5 years, how many violations we've had at grocery stores versus taverns versus convenience stores versus liquor stores.
Well, the problem is, Mr. Galvin, is that without stings, you don't really know because, you know, there isn't an incident. Somebody buys something at a grocery store,
Well-
they're just buying it and out they go, and there isn't usually an incident involved in it.
We do get calls sometimes. We used to get calls, and we would go in and find situations. Sometimes the calls were the tavern saying, I've got an individual here with a fake ID, or I've got an individual here doing X, Y, Z. We go in and we find other things happening. Sometimes we do compliance checks where we would send an underage person in, but other times, the police department would merely walk into a tavern and just start checking IDs and see what they could find. So sometimes you can get different information and different types of violations.
I know they did those.
Right. And then maybe, I guess,
I
another
remember
thing to ask for would be,
He had, what did he call his place, Sneakers there or something?
yeah,
And he was pretty clean on him because he made a big effort at it.
yeah.
And I think they did find somebody in there that was without an ID. And he was one of the first guys that filmed everybody that came in. They had to put their face and their ID right in the camera. And of course, they rolled the camera and they found the person with the ID because the person with the ID would rather have somebody else get the fine rather than them, you know, but, and so I know we did work at these things in the past. Now, maybe we're still working at it, but I guess we just want to know that information, what's going on.
I guess maybe I would ask too, Todd, how many calls for service do we get at these different types of establishments?
That'll be no problem.
And then we can go to the clerk's office to see how many are convenience stores that are licensed versus how many taverns do we have licensed, how many grocery stores, that kind of thing. And have it broken down to that, so we're comparing apples to apples.
I compare oranges to oranges.
You know, and that's certainly something that.
Very appealing.
Yeah.
Very good. You discriminate against pears?
Yeah. Orange, you're going to ask me how I
Or
came up with
bananas.
that?
Oh, no, I'm not.
All right, move to refer to staff for more information.
Second.
Okay, motion by Alder Zimmerman for staff for more information, second by Alder Galvin. Let's see, has anybody got anything else to say on this? I think I'm about done myself. So, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That motion carries.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn by Alder Zimmer,
Second.
second by Alder Dorf. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, we are adjourned. Look,
That's my son, but, you know,